Communism. This is a word used to describe countries like the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea, but is often misdefined in American education due to Red Scares in 1917 and during the Cold War, which generated propaganda that has skewed the education of this ideology and demonizes it heavily. I'm using this as an opportunity to help better educate people on the concept of communism without bias. Let's start from the beginning. Karl Marx was a German philosopher, economist, sociologist, and revolutionary born in 1818. He grew up in an upper-middle-class family and studied law and philosophy at the University of Jena, eventually earning his Ph.D. In 1844, he met future friend and co-author of many writings, Friedrich Engels. In 1847, they were tasked by the League of Communists, a British political party started by Marx, to write a manifesto. In January of 1848, they had finished their masterpiece titled The Communist Manifesto. It was in this small book that the foundational principles of communism were laid out. He later elaborated on these principles as well as his many criticisms of capitalism in his 1876 book, Capital. I will explain the ideas he offered on these and many other works throughout his life. In the manifesto, as well as Capital, Marx and Engels put forth the idea of alienation and exploitation of the working class, which he called the proletariat, by the dominant class, what he called the bourgeoisie. The proletariat is described as the class of people who sell their labor to survive, those who operate but do not own their own means of production. The bourgeoisie, on the other hand, are those who own the means of production and profit off the labor of the worker. They are the person the worker relies on for wages and nowadays insurance and retirement funds. This dynamic, the dynamic of power created by these class differences, is what created the exploitation that Marx theorized. The manifesto claims that these fundamental elements of capitalism, private property, privately owned means of production, and class dynamics create exploitation, which is the basis of Marx's theory of labor value. The theory of labor value is a theory brought forward by Marx of the value of labor. When the argument is made against capitalism that is exploitative of the working class, this theory is often cited. The theory states that the wage of workers should be directly proportional to the value of their labor power. For example, if a worker is employed at a restaurant and each burger they make is worth $1, then they should make $1 for every burger they produce that matches the standard set. The argument of exploitation comes from the fact that the worker is not afforded the full value of their labor. In this case, the workers only return 80 to 90% of their labor value. This theory, along with many others, is the vessel of criticisms of capitalism by Marx that are the foundation for this alternative he called communism. In the Communist Manifesto, Marx explains this idea. He defines the term communism itself as a state of society that is stateless and classless. This is what is called high communism. The overall ideology of Marxism proposes the transition to high communism through what is called low communism, or more commonly, socialism. Marx's socialism is not the same socialism that is used by Scandinavian countries or Bernie Sanders. Marx's socialism is what we inaccurately call communism. True or high communism has never been achieved. Communist countries like the USSR, Maoist China, post-Deng China is not socialist, and Cuba have achieved socialism of different forms. What Marx's socialism defines is a society where the proletariat owns the means of production either directly or indirectly through the state. Lenin further reinforces this by defining socialism as a classless society, which I personally find to be the better definition, considering abolition of all class entails the abolition of private property and inevitably capitalism. There are many types of socialism with varying interpretations of Marx's ideas, from left communism, a more libertarian approach that emphasizes direct control of the means of production by the workers, to Leninism or Marxism-Leninism, where a worker-run state controls the means of production. The transfer of ownership to the collective working class destroys the power dynamic between proletarian and bourgeois, and creates conditions where the worker can thrive. Through the past 100 years, communism has been demonized and misdefined through propaganda and miseducation. I hope this set the record straight. This is not meant to influence opinion, rather give the full view of the ideas of Marxism and communism, rather than confining them to the improper definitions we are taught in school.